Jesus changed the world. Mohammed changed nations. But who left the bigger mark? Let history speak. Number 1, Jesus of Nazareth. Born in Bethlehem, preacher and healer, crucified by the Romans around 33 AD. His followers, mainly poor and uneducated, were no match for the Roman war machine. So Jesus did not conquer any nations or establish any worldly kingdoms. But his ideas sure spread like wildfire. Today, more than 2 billion people, 1 in 3 of us alive today, identify as Christian. That's 1 of every 3 humans on planet Earth. For perspective, that's about half the population of China, the most populated nation on Earth. In fact, if Christianity was a country, it would be the largest on Earth. And yet Christians believe Jesus is returning to Earth again. So just imagine how big the following of Jesus could get. Now let's look at dude. Number 2, Mohammed, the prophet of Islam. Born in Mecca around 570 AD, he too was a preacher, but he also led armies into battle. At first, his own people rejected him, so he fled to Medina. That's when things got really interesting. See, in Medina, Mohammed united the tribes under one banner, conquered Mecca, and then established the first Islamic state, the nation of Medina. From there, he expanded his empire across the Arabian Peninsula. By the time he died in 632 AD, his followers had conquered more land than any other Arab leader before him. It's also important to note that while Jesus was killed by the Romans, Mohammed lived a long life, dying of natural causes. He established the religion of Islam, which today has more than 1.8 billion followers, about 1 in 5 humans on the planet Earth. That's about 60% of the population of the United States. Okay, now we have all the facts. Let's settle this once and for all. Which one of these dudes changed the world more? Well, let's talk about their impact on art and architecture. Both Jesus and Mohammed are revered as prophets, but only Mohammed is considered a god by his followers. So Islam has more of an emphasis on calligraphy and patterns rather than images of prophets. In fact, the only image of Mohammed comes from a very unreliable source and is considered more of a political cartoon than accurate representation. On the other hand, depictions of Jesus in art vary widely. Here's one of my favorites. This is the Adoration of the Magi by Renaissance painter Botticelli. It's pretty mind-blowing to me that someone 500 years ago painted this. Imagine seeing this for the first time. But I think we can all agree the biggest architectural impact from both religions came from churches and mosques built during the Middle Ages. Take a look at this photo. This is the largest mosque in the world, the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. And this is the largest church in the world, St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. They are separated by only 45 miles. And it's interesting that they're roughly the same size and shape. But then again, you can see the influence of Greco-Roman architecture in the basilica. And remember, early Christians were actually banned from worshiping in Rome. So many early Christians gathered in secret catacombs under the city. Early Muslims, on the other hand, faced persecution from the start and were forced to flee to remote areas like Medina. And that's why mosques in general don't have domes or other fancy architectural elements. Most are quite plain inside and are only decorated with calligraphy. The point is, Islam started out as a religion of the oppressed. It wasn't until centuries later that Muslim nations became wealthy from trade and conquest. So which one of these guys impacted the world more? Well, Jesus had a much bigger impact culturally. He's inspired countless works of art, music, literature, and even fashion. I mean, have you ever wondered why lawyers wear those black robes? It's because of early Christian monks who wore similar outfits while translating ancient texts in the Middle Ages. Fun fact, I found that one online. Anyway, it's hard to overstate the cultural impact of Jesus. Think about it. Before Jesus, the pagan Roman Empire was all about pleasure and power. After Jesus, the dominant culture became obsessed with compassion and servitude. Of course, there's the whole idea of original sin and the fall of man, which has led to some truly horrific acts throughout history. But at its best, Christianity has inspired countless acts of charity and service. Take a look at this. It's a church in the Czech Republic, but not just any church. It's the largest church in the world. Why does it exist? Well, it was built to honor the victims of communism in Eastern Europe. Or here, take a look at this. These are the famous loaves and fishes, an iconic painting by Spanish artist Francisco de Zurbarán. It reminds us of the biblical story where Jesus feeds thousands with only a few loaves of bread and some fish. The painting isn't about depicting what actually happened. Instead, it symbolizes how Christianity teaches us to share what little we have. That's the spirit of Jesus. Now, what about the impact of Mohammed? Well, Islam, with its emphasis on peace and submission to God, has inspired similar acts of charity. But its greatest contribution to the world is really its emphasis on education. Unlike many other religions, Islam has always valued learning. That's why the first mosque built by Muslims in Medina is called the Mosque of Knowledge. And the first Muslim to translate the Bible into Arabic was actually a priest. His name was Severus Sebastia. He did it in the 5th century after being converted to Islam. And it is no coincidence that the golden age of Islam occurred at the same time as the Crusades. Why? Because Muslims realized early on that warfare was inevitable. So they placed great importance on science, math, and medicine. That way, they could use reason and evidence to prove the superiority of their faith. So while Jesus inspired compassion and charity, Mohammed inspired intellectualism and education. And that's why Jesus gets 3 out of 5 stars, and Mohammed gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now, keep in mind, this is just my opinion. What do you think? Who had a bigger impact on the world? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.